Negative thoughts do not arrive loudly. They come quietly. They slip into the mind when you are tired, when you are alone, when something does not go as planned. At first they seem small and harmless, a doubt, a worry, a fear, but what you allow to stay will grow. What you allow to repeat will become your truth. If you do not stop negative thoughts early, they will slowly take control of your actions, your emotions, and your future. The mind is like a garden. Whatever you water will grow. If you keep feeding fear, it becomes anxiety. If you keep feeding anger, it becomes bitterness. If you keep feeding doubt, it becomes weakness. Life itself is not always kind, but the real damage begins when the mind turns against itself. Most suffering does not come from events. It comes from the stories you tell yourself about those events. A disciplined mind learns to pause. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every feeling deserves belief. You must learn to watch your thoughts as if they are passing clouds. Some are light, some are dark, but none of them are you. You are the one who observes them. The moment you understand this, you regain power. Negative thoughts grow when they are left unchallenged. They begin as small whispers in the mind, almost unnoticeable, appearing during moments of weakness, fatigue, or disappointment. At first, they seem harmless, just passing ideas that feel natural to accept. But when you do not question them, they settle in. When you allow them to repeat, they gain strength. What starts as a single doubt slowly becomes a belief, and that belief begins to shape how you see yourself and the world. The mind does not reject thoughts on its own. It accepts whatever you allow inside. If you do not stand guard, the mind becomes a place where fear feels comfortable and excuses feel reasonable. A negative thought repeated many times no longer feels negative. It feels familiar. Familiar thoughts feel safe, even when they weaken you. This is how people slowly lose confidence without noticing when it began. Most people believe their thoughts without examination. They assume that because a thought appears, it must be true. But the mind often reacts out of habit, not wisdom. It reacts based on past pain, past failure, and past fear. When a difficult situation appears, the mind rushes to protect itself by expecting the worst. It tells you to avoid, to delay, to doubt, to retreat. If you do not challenge this response, it becomes your default behavior. Unchallenged thoughts turn into emotions. Emotions turn into actions. Actions repeated over time become character. This is how a single unchecked thought can slowly destroy discipline, peace, and direction. People often blame circumstances for their suffering, but much of their struggle comes from what they allow to grow inside their own mind. A disciplined mind learns to pause before accepting a thought. It creates distance between what appears and what is believed. This pause is power. In that moment, you are no longer controlled by the thought. You become the observer instead of the victim. You can ask whether the thought is useful or harmful, whether it pushes you towards strength or weakness. Negative thoughts often exaggerate reality. They make small problems feel permanent. They make temporary pain feel endless. They convince you that one mistake defines your entire future. When these thoughts are not questioned, they create unnecessary suffering. The mind begins to live in imagined disasters instead of present reality. Challenging a thought does not mean fighting it with emotion. It means meeting it with reason and calm. You do not need to panic when a negative idea appears. You simply need to look at it clearly. Ask whether it is based on fact or fear. Ask whether it helps you act with courage or pushes you toward avoidance. Many thoughts lose their power the moment they are examined. The mind becomes stronger when it learns that it is not required to react to everything it produces. Silence toward harmful thoughts is often more effective than argument. When you refuse to engage, the thought weakens. When you stop feeding it attention, it fades. Attention is fuel. Remove the fuel and the fire dies. Life will always present difficulty. Pain, loss, and uncertainty are unavoidable, but suffering multiplies when the mind adds fear, judgment, and resistance. A trained mind accepts what is present without adding unnecessary stories. It focuses on what can be done now, not on what might go wrong later. When you challenge negative thoughts daily, you build inner order. You become harder to disturb and slower to panic. The mind learns that it must serve you, not rule you. Over time, calm replaces chaos, clarity replaces confusion, and strength replaces weakness. The mind suffers more from thoughts than from events. What happens outside of you is often brief, but what happens inside the mind can last for years. An event arrives, does its damage, and then passes. But the thought about that event can return again and again, replaying the pain, reshaping it, enlarging it, and keeping it alive long after the moment is gone. Most pain is not caused by what happens, but by how the mind interprets what happens. Two people can face the same situation, yet one remains calm while the other breaks down. The difference is not the event itself, but the meaning the mind gives to it. The mind adds judgment, fear, blame, and expectation, turning a simple hardship into deep suffering. The mind loves to imagine worst outcomes. It travels into the future and creates disasters that have not happened. It returns to the past and punishes itself for things that cannot be changed. In doing so, it abandons the present moment, which is the only place where action and peace are possible. The body may be safe, but the mind creates danger where none exists. Events are often neutral, they simply occur. It is the mind that labels them as good or bad, success or failure, loss or victory. Once a label is attached, emotions follow. Anger, fear, regret, shame, and anxiety arise not from reality itself, but from the story the mind tells about reality. This story is repeated until it feels real, even when it is distorted. The mind believes it is protecting you by worrying. It believes that by replaying pain, it can prevent future mistakes. But constant worry does not prepare you. It drains you. Constant regret does not correct the past. It traps you in it. The mind confuses thinking with control, not realizing that excessive thinking often removes clarity. When the mind resists what has already happened, suffering begins. Reality does not change because you reject it. Pain increases when you argue with what is. Acceptance is not weakness. Acceptance is understanding that energy should not be wasted on what cannot be changed. A calm mind chooses its battles wisely. Thoughts are not facts. They are reactions. They rise based on habit, memory, and emotion. If you treat every thought as truth, the mind becomes a prison. If you observe thoughts without obeying them, the mind becomes a tool. Freedom begins when you realize that you do not have to follow every mental voice. Much suffering comes from imagining how things should have been. The mind creates an ideal version of the past and compares it to reality. This comparison produces bitterness. The mind then imagines a perfect future and fears failing to reach it. This produces anxiety. Both steal peace from the present. A trained mind learns to separate the event from the interpretation. It sees what happened clearly, without adding unnecessary meaning. It responds with reason instead of emotion. This does not remove pain, but it prevents pain from becoming suffering. When you stop feeding destructive thoughts, their intensity weakens. When you stop replaying events, their grip loosens. Silence within the mind creates space for clarity. In that space, you begin to see that many of your fears were never real, only repeated ideas that felt real through attention. The event has already passed. The thought keeps hurting you. Once this is understood, the mind begins to let go. Not because life is easy, but because unnecessary suffering is no longer accepted. Not every thought deserves your attention or belief. The mind produces thoughts endlessly, just as the lungs produce breath. Some thoughts are useful, some are neutral, and many are harmful. If you try to follow every thought, you will lose direction. If you believe every thought, you will lose peace. Wisdom begins when you learn to choose what deserves your focus. Thoughts often appear automatically. They rise from habit, memory, fear, desire, and past experience. You did not invite many of them, yet they arrive anyway. Because they arrive without effort, people assume they must be true or important. But a thought appearing does not make it accurate. The mind reacts faster than reason, especially when it senses discomfort. Many thoughts are opinions disguised as facts. They say you are weak, that you are behind, that others are judging you, that failure is coming. These ideas feel real because they repeat themselves. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity creates false trust. Over time, the mind stops questioning and starts obeying. Attention is energy. Whatever you focus on becomes stronger. When you give attention to fearful thoughts, fear grows. When you give attention to angry thoughts, anger sharpens. The mind becomes shaped by what it repeatedly entertains. This is why guarding attention is more important than fighting thoughts. Believing every thought leads to emotional exhaustion. The mind jumps from hope to fear, from confidence to doubt, from calm to panic. Life begins to feel unstable, not because it is unstable, but because the mind is constantly reacting. Stability comes from choosing what to engage with and what to ignore. A disciplined mind treats thoughts like visitors. Some are welcomed because they are useful. Some are allowed to pass without conversation. Some are turned away immediately. You do not need to argue with every thought. You do not need to explain yourself to your own mind. Often, refusal to engage is enough. The mind becomes clearer when you slow down and observe. When a thought appears, you can pause and ask whether it helps you act with strength, honesty, and calm. If it does not, it has no value. A thought that weakens your character does not deserve your belief, no matter how loud it is. Most suffering comes from taking thoughts personally. The mind says something harsh, and you assume it defines you. The mind predicts failure, and you assume it is fate. But thoughts are not commands. They are signals, often distorted, often based on old wounds. Treating them as absolute truth gives them power they do not deserve. Learning to ignore unhelpful thoughts is a form of self-respect. It shows that you value your inner peace more than mental noise. Silence inside the mind is not emptiness, it is space. In that space, reason can speak, and clarity can guide action. The goal is not to stop thinking. The goal is to stop being controlled by thinking. When you no longer chase every idea, the mind becomes lighter. Decisions become simpler. Emotions settle. You act based on values, not impulses. With practice, the mind learns that it does not need to react to everything. Some thoughts fade when they are ignored. Some lose their emotional charge when they are not believed. Over time, you develop trust in your ability to choose wisely, not because thoughts disappear, but because they no longer rule your inner world, control your response, not what you cannot change. Life moves according to its own order, not according to your wishes. Events happen without asking for permission. People act based on their own understanding, not yours. When you try to control what is outside your reach, frustration grows. When you accept the limits of control, the mind becomes calm and steady. Much suffering comes from resisting reality. The mind says things should be different, that people should behave better, that outcomes should be fair. But wishing does not alter facts. It only creates inner conflict. Energy spent fighting what cannot be changed is energy stolen from what can be improved. Your response is always within reach. You may not control the storm, but you can control how you stand in it. You may not control loss, delay, or rejection, but you control how you interpret them. The mind either turns difficulty into bitterness or into discipline. That choice belongs to you. People often confuse control with force. They try to bend circumstances through anger, worry, or pressure. But force rarely brings peace. It only exhausts the mind. True control is internal. It is the ability to remain steady when conditions are unstable. Every situation offers two paths. One leads to reaction, the other to response. Reaction is automatic. It comes from habit and emotion. Response is chosen. It comes from awareness and reason. The difference between the two determines the quality of your life. When something unwanted happens, the mind rushes to blame. It looks for someone or something to attack. This creates conflict without solving anything. Blame does not restore control. It removes it. A calm response keeps the mind clear and the path forward visible. Accepting what you cannot change does not mean approving of it. It means recognizing reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. Once reality is accepted, action becomes effective. You stop wasting strength on resistance and use it for progress. The present moment is the only place where response exists. Regret lives in the past. Anxiety lives in the future. Control lives in the now. When the mind stays present, it can choose wisely. When it drifts, it becomes weak and confused. Many people wait for conditions to improve before they improve themselves. They delay growth until life becomes easier, but life rarely becomes easier on its own. Strength is built by choosing discipline, even when conditions are unfair. A steady response creates inner order. It prevents emotions from ruling decisions. It allows you to act based on values rather than impulse. Even in loss, even in failure, dignity remains when the response is controlled. Nothing external can force you to abandon your principles unless you allow it. Words cannot wound unless you accept them. Circumstances cannot break you unless you surrender your inner discipline. This understanding builds quiet confidence. When you focus on what you can control, the mind becomes lighter, expectations loosen, frustration fades. You stop demanding life to obey you and start shaping yourself to face life with strength and clarity. Calm is strength, and silence trains the mind. In a world filled with noise, reaction is praised and restraint is misunderstood. People believe that loud emotions show power, that quick replies show intelligence, that constant expression proves confidence. But true strength moves quietly. It does not rush to explain itself. It does not seek attention. It remains steady while others lose balance. Calm is not the absence of feeling. It is the mastery of feeling. The calm mind still experiences anger, fear, and disappointment, but it does not become ruled by them. Emotions are felt, observed, and released without being allowed to take control. This restraint creates clarity. Clarity creates wise action. Silence is not weakness. Silence is discipline. When you choose not to react immediately, you create space between impulse and action. In that space, the mind regains authority. Many mistakes are made not because of bad intentions, but because of untrained reactions. Silence interrupts this cycle. The mind becomes stronger when it is not constantly expressing itself. Every unnecessary word drains energy. Every argument steals focus. Not every opinion needs to be shared. Not every insult needs a response. When you respond to everything, you become controlled by everything. Silence sharpens observation. When you speak less, you see more. You notice patterns in people, shifts in situations, and changes within yourself. The calm mind listens before it acts. It gathers information instead of rushing to judgment. Anger feels powerful in the moment, but it weakens the mind over time. It clouds judgment and leads to regret. Calm may feel passive, but it protects clarity. A calm response often disarms conflict more effectively than force. Training the mind to remain calm requires practice. The first step is awareness. Notice when the body tenses, when the breath shortens, when emotions rise. These signals warn you that reaction is near. With awareness, you can pause. Silence during emotional moments is a form of control. It prevents words that cannot be taken back. It prevents actions that create long-term consequences. Over time, the mind learns that it does not need to explode to survive discomfort. Calm also protects dignity. When others try to provoke, they seek control over your emotions. Refusing to react denies them that power. Your calm becomes a shield. Your silence becomes a boundary. A silent mind is not empty. It is focused. It chooses its words carefully. When it speaks with purpose. People listen because the words are rare and measured, not constant and emotional. Calm allows you to endure difficulty without becoming bitter. Silence allows you to observe pain without adding unnecessary suffering. Together, they create inner stability that does not depend on external approval. In moments of chaos, the calm mind becomes a point of balance. While others panic, it remains steady. While others react, it responds. This steadiness builds trust within yourself. Strength that is quiet lasts longer than strength that is loud. Silence trains patience. Patience trains endurance. Endurance shapes character. Over time, calm becomes natural, not forced, and the mind learns to remain unshaken, even when the world is loud. Discipline your thoughts daily, or they will discipline you. The mind left untrained does not remain neutral. It moves toward chaos, fear, and comfort-seeking. Just as a body weakens without exercise, the mind weakens without discipline. Thoughts begin to wander, focus breaks, and emotions take control. Without daily guidance, the mind starts guiding you in directions you did not choose. Many people believe discipline is harsh or restrictive. They think it removes freedom. In truth, discipline creates freedom. A disciplined mind is not pulled in every direction by impulse. It chooses where to focus, how to respond, and what to ignore. Without discipline, the mind reacts to every thought, every feeling, and every external influence. Thoughts repeat what they are used to. If the mind is fed fear, it learns fear. If it is fed comfort, it resists effort. If it is fed distraction, it struggles with focus. Daily discipline interrupts these patterns. It teaches the mind new habits through repetition and awareness. The mind does not change through motivation alone. Motivation fades. Discipline remains. Training the mind means setting clear rules for what you allow inside. It means noticing negative patterns and stopping them early. It means choosing reason over emotion. Even when emotion feels strong, daily reflection is a powerful tool. Looking at your thoughts without judgment helps you see patterns clearly. You notice where the mind weakens, where it avoids discomfort, where it creates unnecessary fear. Awareness is the first step toward control. Discipline also means accepting discomfort. The mind naturally avoids effort and seeks ease. But growth lives in resistance. When you choose to stay focused despite discomfort, the mind learns endurance. When you act despite doubt, the mind learns courage. Without discipline, thoughts begin to control behavior. Procrastination feels natural. Excuses feel justified. Weak habits form quietly. Over time, the mind becomes a master instead of a servant. Life begins to feel heavy and disordered. A disciplined mind responds instead of reacts. It does not panic under pressure. It does not collapse under criticism. It remains steady because it has been trained through small daily challenges. Strength is built in ordinary moments, not only during crisis. Training the mind daily does not require long hours. It requires consistency. Small moments of awareness, repeated every day, reshape the mind. A few minutes of silence, reflection, or intentional focus builds more strength than rare bursts of effort. When discipline becomes a habit, the mind becomes quieter. Fewer thoughts demand attention. Fewer emotions overpower reason. Clarity increases. Decisions become simpler because they are guided by principle rather than impulse. If you do not set boundaries for your thoughts, the world will set them for you. Noise, opinions, fear, and distraction will shape your inner life. Discipline protects your mind from being controlled by what is outside. Over time, disciplined thought creates inner order. Inner order creates confidence. Confidence creates calm action. The mind becomes a place of strength rather than struggle, a tool for growth rather than a source of suffering.